It's that time of the year. Millions of students across the country are graduating from college, but unfortunately for them, they're entering a punishing job market, specifically for their demographic. For roughly the last year, the unemployment rate for recent college grads has been hovering around 6%, the highest in more than a decade, leaving aside the pandemic. Many people blame AI for taking jobs that would have gone to young people. Joining me now is Derek Thompson. He is the host of the podcast Plain English and writes an eponymous Substack. Derek Thompson, good to have you.
Great to be back. Thank you, Fareed.
So, first of all, explain, is it true that for recent college graduates, this is a terrible job market?
Yeah, the money statistic here is that the New York Federal Reserve has been measuring the unemployment rate for young college graduates between about 22 and 27 for the last 35 years. So this is a long data set. And for the first time on record, young college graduates now have a higher unemployment rate than the general population. This has never happened before. Historically, young people coming out of college are hired almost immediately. They are young, they are cheap, they've spent the last 4 years learning how to get that first job. Something seems to have broken down here now, such that the unemployment rate for young college graduates is 20 to 25% higher than the overall unemployment rate. This is not something that we've seen in modern economic history. And that is really the central mystery here. What is it? If you look for the year that this break happened, that the unemployment rate for young folks tended to rise higher and higher, it was around 2022. Well, what else happened in 2022? A lot of things, but just to kick things off, ChatGPT is released in November of that year. And so a lot of people have been looking to blame artificial intelligence for this suddenly inflating unemployment rate.
So when you look at it, you've parsed through a number of things to look at. And let's get one technical one out of the way, which I think is important, which is the unemployment rate is calculated by asking not how many people are unemployed, but how many people who are looking for jobs are unemployed. And there's good evidence that recent college graduates look for jobs more. In other words, there are a lot of older people who stop looking for jobs. They stop participating in the labor market. So there may be just some of this that is statistical, right?
That's exactly right. So look, it'd be one thing if it was just young college graduates that we're seeing this elevated unemployment. That would suggest that maybe ChatGPT and other large language models that are very good at doing the kind of thing you would expect from a 22-year-old graduate of Penn State, University of Virginia, reading, writing, synthesizing, making PowerPoints and spreadsheets. All right, then you would say, okay, what's happened is AI is eating these jobs for 22-year-old college grads. But here's what makes it a little bit more complicated. If instead of looking at the unemployment rate, which is a little bit complicated for all the reasons that you said, if instead you look at the employment rate, it looks like young folks who didn't go to college are facing the same declines in employment as young people who did go to college. And that, I think, should make us not focus exclusively on artificial intelligence, but rather say, no, something that is bigger is happening to the overall economy that is driving down the hiring rate for young people as a general category.
And what do you think that is?
So a lot of things happened in 2022. It would be very convenient for our purposes of just explaining the world if the only thing that happened in 2022 was OpenAI released ChatGPT. That's not the only thing that happened. Another really big thing that happened is that the Federal Reserve started raising interest rates. What is the point of raising interest rates? The point is to cool off demand, to raise the cost of money. And what you've seen since 2022 is that the overall hiring rate in this country has gone down, down, down. So the way to maybe think of the U.S. economy right now, and in particular the labor market, is that, all right, on the one hand, the unemployment rate is low, right? Older people who want a job overwhelmingly have a job. But the hiring rate is also low. Young people trying to break into the labor force are finding it hard to break into it.
Finally, I want you to talk about the conclusion people draw from all of this is it's not worth getting a college degree. And I think that the data is overwhelming on this subject in one direction, right?
There's a college wage premium. We can have a debate over whether the college wage premium declined in the last 5 years or grew in the last 5 years or is flat in the last 5 years. But a college wage premium by definition means that if you go to college, all things equal, you are expected to make a higher wage when you graduate. We have no clear evidence that has changed. In fact,
and
I
that's
would
fairly
encourage
significant,
people,
right? That, I mean, if you look at it over a lifetime, you're talking about a very large, a very
$1 million.
large difference. Yeah.
Potentially $1 million, which is a lot of dollars. I think one way to think about technology is that every time technology is introduced to the economy, the effect that it has is the same as the effect of the tractor on the working horse. Working horses had a great run for millennia. The tractor was invented, and then the population of working horses in America plummeted by 99%. But that's not how most technologies work. Most technologies work more like spreadsheets. Now imagine that you and I were commentators in the 1970s and digital spreadsheets are invented, things like Excel. And imagine if you and I, the only story of technological change that we knew was that of tractors. We would have predicted that the number of spreadsheet workers in America was about to decline by 99%. It didn't. It grew by a factor of about 1 million. Everybody works with spreadsheets now. Excel is on everybody's computer. And so sometimes what technology does is reduce the cost of a task, reduce the cost of a piece of work, and by increasing its efficiency, thereby increase demand for it. Once digital spreadsheet work was easy, everybody suddenly started coming up with work that could be done with Excel, and then you had this explosion of the white-collar workforce that was doing work with Microsoft Office. So I would encourage people to keep the possibility of both these things in mind. We hear a lot about the AI jobs apocalypse, which treats artificial intelligence like tractors and human beings like horses. But I would also encourage people to remember that spreadsheets happened. They were invented and they didn't replace the white-collar economy. They grew the white-collar economy. It's possible that 20 years from now, when you and I are having a conversation on the metaverse or something, we're going to look back and realize that everybody is using Claude or OpenAI, ChatGPT on their computer. It has turned everybody into an AI worker. It has not led to a world where AI replaced work.
Derek Thompson, pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Next on GPS, we'll tackle the other side of the coin. What should young people do to navigate the difficult job market? We have an interesting answer in a moment. You just heard Derek Thompson's explanation of why the job market is so tough for today's graduates, but I want to focus now on the human side of the problem. These challenges are leaving young people feeling lost and hopeless as they try to begin their careers. A new book from the New York Times investigative reporter Jodi Kantor seeks to offer hope and tangible advice for young people as they begin their careers. It is called How to Start: Discovering Your Life's Work. Welcome, Jodi.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you were asked to give a speech at your alma mater, Columbia, the kind of undergraduate class day address, and you give it and you notice it's going viral. What is it about what you said, do you think, that made it go viral?
Well, the question I was trying to answer in the speech and in the book is, what are young people actually supposed to do in this environment? Because we've all seen the negative statistics. We know that it's a grim time for hiring, but that doesn't necessarily help if you're 22 years old and looking to begin your life. So I thought the compelling and very difficult but worthy question was, what does a positive, productive response look like to this environment? Because almost none of us can afford to give up on work.
All right, so let's start right at let's not bury the lead. What is the best response to this uncertain job environment?
I think the best response is to acknowledge that we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, as we speak on 1,000 podcasts, there are people stating with great certainty exactly what the future of work will be. I will tell you, we do not know. What I would challenge any person, any young person listening to this today, any parent who's concerned about a young person is, I would say, don't just look for a job. You're certainly doing that. But I think the great careers are made of a craft and a need. A craft being some expertise or skill that you have that other people don't. You want some way of distinguishing yourself in the marketplace. Your craft could be surgery. It could be baking. It could be making a great TV show like this. It could be inventing a new cancer therapy. The other thing that I think everybody should look for, if you have a craft, if craft is authority, you also want to harness yourself to a need. Need is propulsion. Need is what is going to push you forward. We've seen years of conventional wisdom about the supposed right thing to study. I think you'll remember this. When I was in high school, the advice was learn Japanese. And we were told that if you didn't speak Japanese, you were going to be a loser and you were going to be left behind in the world economy. Well, meanwhile, the Japanese stock market languished.
Then it became learn Chinese.
Genetics, computer science, and these are all obviously great pursuits. But the idea that they are a golden ticket that is that are going to protect you against disappointments or failures, that's not right. That is just conventional wisdom and herd thinking.
So what does need mean then?
So for need, what I want to ask young people now is, can you use your own eyes and ears to make an independent assessment of what you think society will need over the course of your working life? Because those needs, whether they're business needs or altruistic ones, they propel us forward. The best locators of need that I have seen come from personal experience, and often very difficult personal experience. There's stories in the book of people who really faced tragedy or serious obstacles and built a career around addressing those problems.
Tell the story of the
Exaria.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, she is really, I think, the person more than any who pushed me to write this book, because I meet in the middle of the chaos at Columbia, during the really bad time there. They invite me to give the undergraduate commencement address. I have to figure out what to say. The students say to me, how are we supposed to find our life's work in this crazy environment? And I meet this extraordinary young woman, Exaria. Exaria wants to be a research psychologist. She wants to get a PhD, and she has a very specific reason, which is that she wants to come up with new forms of addiction treatment because her older brother Keith died of an overdose when she was 11.
Where is she now?
So Exaria, I am very happy to tell you, is doing groundbreaking research in addiction at a famous Boston area hospital, where she's just working with top flight people, and she's really on her way. In the end, the need pulled her through. She was right about our need for better addiction treatment, and it pulled her through those obstacles.
It's a very smart meditation on something I think every person is thinking about, because either they're young and worrying about it, or they know people who are young and worrying about it.
This is a generational problem, Fareed. It really is.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next on GPS, what does one neighborhood in Turkey tell us about that country's sustained democratic backsliding? A compelling new book explores just that. Up next.